everybody, Code here, and welcome back to the Vector Automotive Challenge. Today, we are going into the year of 1968. We have just rolled out our Intrigue Mark II, and the media loves it, the consumers seem to be loving it, and most importantly, the investors were really on board with what we did there. The combat is still rolling strong, everybody seems to be enjoying that, and it's only a couple years old now, so no real need to go and do any major updating to that. But what does probably need a little bit of updating, and really I think probably an overhaul, is the quark. And that is because this chassis, this car's design, everything that we were pushing with it is now being a little bit overlapped with the Intrigue. And I want to try and push this car a little bit further into the large sedan slash almost the luxury kind of market, and get it away from some of the everyday driver market that the Intrigue is now doing much better at kind of consuming that market. Especially with the wagon, and the Sport actually now has a much better everyday kind of driver feel to it, so I think it's important to push this car a little bit further away, and I want to do something a little bit unique with it and try and incorporate some new markets into our company. So we are going to do a new ground up build today, and in the year 1968 we are building this car as a concept. We are prototyping it for production in 1969. That means that we are kind of jumping a year. I am happy enough with the model lineup we have for 68 to leave it kind of as it is. It means we're going to be very busy in 1969. I have big plans for our company in the coming year. Our last generation Quark was built on this body, and this body I believe is starting to look a little bit on the dated side, and it's a little bit limited in the amount of different bodies we can make based off of this, this chassis. We have a sedan, a coupe, and a wagon. These are all kind of similar to what the Intrigue is, and it's only a very little bit longer than the Intrigue. So what we are going to do is go to this body, which is a much longer 111-inch wheelbase body that has a lot of variability into it. So we can do a lot of different things with this chassis. There is the coupe that is possibly what we might move the combat to later on. It gives us a little bit of an option there, so we could share chassis amongst the Quark and the combat in the future, or this could be a completely different car, or something we don't even, end up producing. But for the beginnings, we need to make the sedan, because that was what the Quark really was, and the market that it consumed. So this body can get very, very large, very large, and that's great and all, but man, does it get ugly when you do that. So we don't need to go quite that crazy, but let me work on morphing this into something that I am happy with. Alright, I think that's a good basis to start with, and now we need to move on to the chassis, and we are not going to make this car a ladder chassis, body on frame. We are going to make it a monocoque, and I think that's going to help with my future plans for expanding upon this particular body. Then we will go with just steel, and we're going to keep it longitudinal. This will be a little bit more of a high kind of quality car, and I want it to be very comfortable, and the double wishbone is particularly good at that, even if it does come at a little bit higher price. And then in the rear, we will have probably, let's see, double wishbone would be great. Independent rear suspensions with a differential, quite pricey indeed. I think it would be very much so appreciated by its audience, but I'm not sure if this is going to make it too expensive. So this may be something we come back to. We may have to go back to a solid axle if we can't make this car affordable with that. It's just something I have to keep in mind. Panel material will be steel. Going to make this basically a production ready concept car. we don't have a whole lot of time to work with. As far as the styling goes, the car actually has a similar shape to the Intrigue, except it's much larger. So I'm going to try and do something kind of in the same theme as that, but maybe a little bit more intricate. Alrighty, and here we have it. This is the Quark Mark II, and I am quite pleased. Like I mentioned, I used some of the styling design that we had in the Intrigue, and just kind of made it a little bit more on the bold side for this larger, bolder car. Particularly happy with how this back turned out. The ability to have these kind of humps coming off the back was really cool, and with our now trademark, spoiler morphed into it, I think that looks pretty slick, if I do say so myself, and I do. So, what is next? Oh, that's right, I don't know, building the car. Alright, and in a color that's a little bit more fitting instead of bright red, let's put rear-wheel drive in there. And the first trim we're doing is going to be the main model, the one that we will have on most of these sales floors, and that is the Distance, because that was the car that really kind of put our company into motion to producing not just sports cars and not just, high-performance niche market cars, but cars that everybody wants to drive. So that is the most important thing to do here. But we're going to try and make it even more to the comfortable side, to the easy driving kind of side. So as far as an engine goes for the base model, we have a tough choice. Our new 4-cylinder is a great engine, but it's just not enough for a car this big. But our previous inline 6 is starting to get a little bit dated. We designed that engine in the early 60s, and I don't know, it could be time for a little bit of a refresh on this. Let's see what we can do with it. So I went ahead and copied the newest of the variants of this engine. That was the P series, and it looks like it was producing 122 horsepower and 128 foot-pounds of torque, and had a 13% economy. All of these need to be improved. So let's see what we can do here. The first menu is, of course, locked down, and it was only a 2-liter, huh? Does it get bigger than that? It does get bigger than that. Okay, we definitely want to be bigger than that. And can we bring that stroke down, maybe? Try and get this thing to rev a little bit more would be nice. Actually, it was already going up to 6. That's not too bad. That's not too bad at all. So let's just increase the bore all the way, and 2.4. Actually, the largest would be 2.5 liters. Then the bottom end starts to get a little unhappy. But if the bottom end gets a little unhappy, we could either reduce the... Yeah, let's reduce that down, because that's so long-stroked. That's a little carried away, I think. Boy, you know what? There's just not much left in this engine. We may need to start over and build just a new block altogether, and not fall into the rut that I've seen other manufacturers fall into in the past, and just get too hung up on wanting to keep refreshing the same engine over and over. So let's give it a try. Let's make a new inline 6. So I really think the biggest problem with the previous iteration was that very, very small bore that I limited the block to. This car can withstand a very large engine, so in the family capacity, I'm going to make that very large indeed, because there's other things that I might want to do with this engine. So if this thing can go up to 3.9 liters, that's all well and good. I'm going to stick with overhead cam. That is working quite well for us. We could potentially go up to the 3-valve setup. It is... Yeah, it's a very small increase in price, really, for a pretty decent increase in the emissions control and the airflow. So with that huge 3.9 liter max, this engine can still get pretty small in its capacity. However, about 3 liters is where I would like to be. And let's do that. Yeah, let's try to just make it squarish for now. First roll through of this engine looks like we have a little bit of a knock issue, a little bit of a valve float issue with the bigger size. Obviously, that's going to be an issue. And let's see, let's go to first here because I did not give this any increase, and I always want to do that with these carburetors. Only the best carburetors for our cars. And then looks like it's just having a little bit of knock. It's only like a couple octane points away, but once we go down to 9.7 to 1, that's all fine and dandy. 170 horsepower and 205 foot-pounds of torque is actually not out of the ballpark of where I want to be. But then going up to a larger exhaust fixed that issue. Really does not need to rev as high as it is. We can reduce that all the way down to 5,600. Still barely valve floating. A little bit more than I would like, I think. So we threw a little bit more money into a better valve setup, and that seems to have taken care of those issues. And we can probably go up to 57. Yes, we can, pretty much reliably. It just helps our performance index. Reliability is at 44.4, which sounds low, but the engine reliability and the car reliability numbers don't exactly coincide perfectly. Economy on this one's already at 14.3. I would like a little bit more out of it too. It's not a huge priority, but we might as well get what we can. There we go, 15, that's better. And we're still getting good performance, 188 horsepower, 204 foot-pounds of torque. I think this is going to be a pretty good start. For the regular distance model of the Quark will be an automatic, because as I mentioned, we're really pushing the comfort and drivability of this car. And let's see, 3-speed we can get we get up to 60 in first? Would that be advantageous? I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see once we get there. Alrighty, I've spared you the process of putting the bare essentials on the car as far as the trim goes. So now it's time to fine-tune it to kind of put it into the markets that we want. So before we start fine-tuning, let's look at the markets. And, okay, apparently it's really easy to make muscle and pony cars in this era, and that's not surprising. It's a rear-wheel drive car, pretty decent power. Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to fit in those categories. Not exactly where we want it. I was hoping for more family sport premium, and because that's a little bit more in the premium category than is the Intrigue. I was hoping to get a little bit of premium budget, not really seeing much of that, and maybe a little bit more of the commuter or the family, something like that. So let's highlight this guy and that guy, and what could we do to possibly push it into those categories more. This one has a heavy weight on, looks like the heaviest weight is actually on safety, so that's something to look at. And then prestige, comfort, and practicality are important. Cornering is somewhat important on that one, so that's important to know. Versus on this guy, it looks like reliability has a pretty good makeup in here, and economy has a little bit. Safety has a good chunk, prestige has a good chunk. Comfort, though. Comfort is big. So probably the biggest things I've done wrong so far is not making it quite luxury-ish enough. Okay, well, let's go to the gearbox first. I went for an automatic transmission. That, I think, is the ideal choice for a car like this. The spacing is probably incorrect. And it may be incorrect, but it may not help the kind of things we're looking at. What about more overdrive? Does that help the miles per gallon? Slightly. That's good. That's an important thing. And less wheel spin is good for drivability, which is helping these as well. But overall, I don't think this is maybe the place we should be looking. We'll stick that at kind of a normal 50-50-ish spacing for now. Handling-wise, it's quite good already, actually. Medium compounds, I think, are better for daily drivers. When you go up to the sports compound, yeah, it makes it faster, makes it sportier, but that's not what we're aiming for. But the hard tires, I think, probably aren't luxurious enough, if you will. Although it does give it a little bit more comfort. And it does make it probably more drivable. I think the mediums are a happy medium, if you will. And I think I'm pretty happy with the size. So not a whole lot showing its face yet. Brakes. Looks like front tires are taking off in speed versus the brakes, so maybe more front brake is needed. But it looks like going to a 2-piston caliper is going to solve that issue, and which means we could probably go with a more comfort-minded pad on there. And then in the rear, our brakes and tires are kind of overlapping each other right now. If we went with a solid disc, it would basically completely get rid of the brake fade, and that is indeed helping, especially in the Family Sport Premium. Not seeing a big improvement in Premium Budget just yet. We will have to see. But let's also maybe go with a more comfort-minded pad there. Yeah, it did increase comfort quite substantially, so yeah, we'll go for a happy medium on that. Quality on this, it's helping, but I think that's a fine-tuning thing, so let's leave that as it is. I don't think there's too much to do here. Pretty happy with all this. Do we get any more reliability? Where is reliability? There it is. No, reliability is as good as it's going to get. Here may be the biggest place to make changes. I think the interior needs a completely different kind of mindset. I went with 5 seats. You can go up to 6. What does that do? That makes it extremely uncomfortable. Well, I mean, it actually made it more desirable, did it not? No, it did not. It killed the desirability. No, it didn't. It made it better. Numbers are hard. It does make it more practical. Somehow that makes it safer. Confusing. So premium versus luxury here. Let's see. It's still affordable. It's still not getting much premium budget out of there yet. It's still affordable, and it is... We lose 4% affordability for only gaining a slight bit of desirability, or whatever that is. I think it's desirability. What about safety? Oh, that's a big one. Okay, so people would rather pay for more safety on a car like this than more comfort, I guess. Okay. And then the radio, the entertainment system, seems like they would prefer to have a very nice radio. The Family Sport Premium would really like a record player. However, it does make it less affordable. Oh, it does. Does that actually increase the premium? It does. Could we actually produce a vehicle with a record player? I think that's maybe a little off the deep end. But what people really seem to want is safety, so we did increase the quality on that. And on the interior as well, perhaps. You really start to lose the affordability of the car. So let's stay away from that. Quality of the power steering does help drivability and comfort, so people seem to like that little change. Now, I went with progressive springs. The standards are also okay, but people seem to prefer the progressive ones in these markets, so we'll stick with that. And let's see, of course we need to increase the front dampers until it basically stops helping. And people in this market do want a good drivable car, easy to drive, so we put a big front sway bar in there to really make sure it's pretty much pushy at all times, but still overall has good handling. The rear bar actually does help too. Or getting rid of the rear bar probably helps completely. It needs a little bit. Okay, that's fine. That's all fine and dandy. Bottom out. We are not having any bottoming out, so we put that right probably where it stops. No, they want it to have good off-road and practicality, most importantly, so yeah, keep it nice and high. Okay, with this first batch of changes, we got, 13.6 miles per gallon. That could probably be a little better. It's lighter than I expected, at less than 3,000 pounds. Lots of green here. This is a nice thing to see. I think that is probably, although we don't have any super strong categories, although Family Sport Premium is pretty good, I think it's also great to have a large audience too. Shut up, helicopter. There is Commuter Premium, Family Premium, Family Sport and Family Sport Premium, Fun Premium, Muscle, Sport Budget, and Premium Budget. All of those are pretty much, in the range of being shoppable. Alright, I think that's enough tweaking for this car, and let me know what you think. Is this a good direction for the Quark, and is this a good idea to have a lot of different options as far as buyers go, and it really does. Even more than we see here. There are other bright green ones on here, but I think it only shows the top 10. So, like I said, a very wide potential for a consumer base on this car. This is just the distance, however. I said I wanted to make a new chassis here to have more variability and have more options to cover a wider audience, and that is exactly what we're going to do. My plan for 69 is to also introduce the Carrier, which will have one distinct change. I plan to make it into a truck. Not really a truck, but something that competes with your El Camino and Ford Ranchero kind of market. So it actually had a pretty natural little transformation there. The fixtures all fit pretty well, so we can reuse those. And I think it makes a pretty attractive little half truck, a cruck if you will. Fixes there for like the door handles and whatnot. The front I don't think needs to be changed at all. What's going to be interesting is making this have a market. I have no idea what to expect here, so let's find out. In the engine department, I probably do want it to have a little bit more of a truck feel, so I think we can use this same engine to make a more truck-ish kind of layout. So the changes I've made is a longer stroke and a little bit bigger bore, and then just a kind of more simple layout here. We're going for a standard intake instead of the performance intake, and a little bit lower rev limit, a little bit less cam profile, really building that torque curve so that this engine is quite usable. This all might need to be tuned as we trim out the car, or truck, or cruck, or whatever it is, because, like I said, I really don't know what to expect as far as the market in this goes. Let's go ahead and just bring it, well, let's go in here to make sure. Yeah, okay, all of this stuff's carried over, so without changing anything, let's look at the markets. Interesting. Very interesting. It's basically got the same market. That's bizarre. And is there... Let's see. As of right now, I don't think it's realizing that this is a truck at all. And honestly, it's not set up to be a truck at all. So I'm going to try some stuff out to see if I can't truck it up a little bit somehow. Alright, let me do a little rundown here of the decisions I've made for our Carrier. Now the Carrier Sport. It is a manual gearbox, 4-speed, and has a decent overdrive, so 16 miles per gallon. That's not too shabby at all. And then it has some bigger tires on there with smaller wheels, so it has, you know, a little bit more off-road ability. Brakes pretty much stay the same. Aero pretty much stays the same. Interior-wise, it is bench-seated in the front, so 3 seats. They go down to a regular standard interior, basic radio, standard safety, and kind of an off-road, semi-off-road, semi-performance setup for the suspension, which seems to be working out okay. I need to adjust this yet, so that will just improve some stats, but there's a discussion that needs to happen with the stats. Sorry to have to break the fourth wall here, but as far as the game goes, it does not know what to do with this thing. I don't think it recognizes the fact that this has a truck bed on it, therefore it does not give it any kind of utility increase, therefore it's having trouble putting it into the correct market. So, I'm relying on you, the investors, to tell me if you think there is a market for our Carrier Sport. Is it something better than what Chevy and Ford are doing already? Is it different than theirs? Is it necessary? I clicked the wrong thing there. Maybe we need to do something else with it, go like crazy high performance. I need your help, so let me know what you think we should do with this. It's a concept that I really like and want to continue with. It's like a mini El Camino, basically. You know, it's much smaller, just in looks. I don't know, guys. We'll have to figure this one out. And let me know what you think of the new updated Quark, or any new submodels of this that you'd like to see. Like I said, we got big plans for 69, and having this as our backbone vehicle is going to be important, so this needs to be a success. I look forward to your feedback. Thanks as always for watching, and I will see you next time. Is to build a competitor for the rally. Sometimes in these competitions it's been more based around building a vector automobile. This time, I am going to have you building your own competitor in 1967 against the Intrigue Mark II Rally. This is very specific. This is a much narrower kind of build than the previous ones. You are going after me. However, I am also the person who gets to pick